Good evening all and welcome. Tonight we're going to be heading into the depths of the basement for some truly disturbing stories. So grab your flashlight, because I hope you're not afraid of the dark, as it's time to let the darkness take control. When we were growing up, we were best friends with a brother and sister pair who were the exact same ages, so we spent all our time with them at their house. Their house was big. It even had a movie theater in the basement. My brother and I slept over often. The four of us usually slept in the basement in the theater, since it had a huge sunken couch that fit us all. Around the time I was 9 or so, and my brother was older, so he remembers it better. Our friends were really excited to have us over, because they'd gotten a few couch cushions in the crawl room, so it would be like camping. My brother and I had no idea what they meant. We knew every inch of the house, so we went to see this room. In their basement, around the corner from the theater, there was a short door, so short that you had to crawl in to get to it. My brother and I had never seen this door before, even though we'd practically grown up in the house. We questioned it, but neither of us remember the answer they gave, only that they just found it. They were rich, so I guess we assumed it was a new construction. Anyway, we slept on the couch cushions in that short room that night, and neither my brother or I can remember anything remarkable about it, and we slept in the theater again after that night. The remarkable thing happened after a few years. It was my friend's 14th or so birthday, and I was keeping her busy while her brother was hiding her present, presumably in the crawl room. At the end of her birthday, he brought up the crawl room, and he said something like, "You remember going in and out of there a few times, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He looked confused, and asked me to show him where I remember the door being. We go to the basement, and lo and behold, there is no door, not even an outline of where it could have been sealed. My brother kicks the wall and it's solid cement. We ask our friend's parents, and they have no idea. They've never done construction down there, and there was no room other than the theater in the basement. I swear, I was in this room. All night, we sat on cushions in there and brought a small TV with a Nintendo. We went in and out for a solid night. We all remember it. After our friends moved, the new neighbors had us over, and my brother and I went into the basement with fresh eyes of logical adults. Still nothing. No door. And we realized that there would have been virtually no room for us to sit comfortably, because the basement only extends about 4 foot past the edge of the house. The room would have been under our friend's lawn. I know it's not outright scary, but I think it falls under the category of the paranormal because it's simply baffling. I was working at an 100-plus-year-old abandoned farmhouse several years ago. My co-worker and I were told to find the well for the house, since they were thinking of developing the property. After looking for a while, we figured it might be in the old house. I grabbed my flashlight, and we head in through a window that wasn't boarded up very well. The place was creepy. The second floor had a burnt goat carcass and a pentagram drawn in ash over the wall. So that started the chills and goosebumps. We eventually made it to the basement, where I almost fell into the very deep well at the end of the steps. Not sure how deep it was, but our 25-foot tape wouldn't hit the bottom. Anyway, my curiosity was still running wild, so we went searching around the basement. My coworker noticed that one of the stone walls didn't go up to the floor joint, and he pointed that it was probably a fake wall. Good call on his part. He boosted me over the wall, and I helped him climb over. The first room was empty and nothing exciting, just dark, wet, and cold. Looking around, there was another wall with an opening. I decided to go first. Again, I was boosted over the wall. My co-worker thought it would be funny to hang onto my flashlight for a while as I stumbled in the dark. Finally, he tossed it over to me, and that's where I began to freak out. The room had chains built into the walls, with wrist and ankle shackles. The walls had scratch marks from nails, I'm guessing from someone trying to escape. I lasted about 30 seconds in the room before I started my dash over both walls, the well, and right out the window we climbed through to get into that creepy house. I don't think it was just the shackles or the scratch marks that creeped me out, but the ice-cold chills that shot down my spine, like there was something truly evil lurking down in that place. I'd been living in my first apartment alone for maybe 2 weeks. It was a basement apartment, which meant cheap, and the windows were right at ground level, so you could see legs and shoes walk by. There were 2 bedrooms. I slept in one with the blinds closed, but the other room's windows had some water damage, so I kept the blinds all the way up to let them dry out before maintenance came. That room had nothing in it but spare boxes from moving in. One night I was asleep and then suddenly completely awake and alert, every fibre of my being suddenly on edge. I looked at my phone and saw that it was around 4 a.m. I lay in bed for a minute before I turned towards my closed window and saw it, a large dark shadow of a person with a flashlight trying to see into my bedroom. I instantly freaked. I quietly grabbed a small hunting knife and stealthily moved to the hall so that I could see into the other bedroom, the one whose window coverings were wide open. As I peeked around the corner, the person was scanning the floor of my bedroom methodically with the flashlight. They were big, had heavy boots on, and keys that jingled. At this point, as a single girl alone in a crappy apartment, I thought that was it. I was 100% prepared to take my little hunting knife and fight this guy. My adrenaline was sky high. At that moment, my phone buzzed, and I got a text from a friend on the police force who literally asked, "What's going on at your apartment?" I thought, yep, this is a bad guy. He's peering in my windows, and is going to bust in any second now. But then he went away. I didn't hear from my police friend until after I texted back. I decided to lie down on my bed and just wait to see what happened next. Not 5 minutes later, someone knocked on my door with incredible force. The panic mounted again. Now I have no peephole, no safety chain, just a deadbolt. At the top of my voice, in case it's a murderer, and I wanted to wake people up, I yell, "Who is it?" I hear a meek voice reply that it's the police. My first thought is now, it's either a very clever plan to get a girl to open her apartment door. So I stood there silently before I heard the voice say again that I wasn't in trouble. I opened the door a smidgen, ready to slam it, and I see 2 cops. One backed away from the door, and one up the steps. They must have seen my tiny little knife or something. They proceeded to apologize for scaring me. Turns out they were the ones looking in my windows. I yelled at them and possibly cried a little. The adrenaline finally broke, and I got the whole story from my friend the next day. Turns out a fellow resident of the apartment complex had gotten drunk, lost his key, and broken into his own apartment and gone to bed. They thought it was mine, and were confused by the lack of broken windows. I was terrified at the time, but it's a good story now. When I was 8, my whole family gathered at my aunt's house for Christmas. Everyone was there. Being a Hispanic family, there was a number of us in the house. All the lights were on in every single room. Music was playing on both floors. The kitchen was abuzz with all the ruckus of cooking going on. Anyway, a few hours into it, around 1 in the morning, the power goes out. Everything is dark and quiet. Some deliberation later, myself and my uncle volunteered to get to the cellar, where the fuse box is. We walk into the back of the kitchen, through the door, and down a flight of stairs into the cellar. This place is pitch black. There was a small window on the far side of the exterior part of the floor, yet no light came in since it was just as dark outside. I place my hand on his right shoulder, as he leads me through the room, trying to blindly guide ourselves to a metal box against the wall. As we slowly make our way through the thick darkness, we hear something move up ahead. We assumed it to be rats or mice and moved on. We take another 5 steps when my uncle breaks the silence, asking if I had just slapped him. I did not. We were alone down there, and I thought the slapping noise would have been heard in the quiet, which added to my confusion. He complained about feeling like he just got slapped on the back. Weird, but we moved on. 2 minutes later, we find the box. He returns the power to the upper floor, and the party continues as if it never happened in the first place. After a while, my uncle started complaining about some weird sensation on his back. He described it as the static-like pringling you get when your arm is falling asleep and getting slapped hard. His wife asked him to lift up his shirt to inspect it, and that's when we first noticed the large handprint on his back, a clear red mark placed right on his left shoulder blade and going past his spinal cord. Upon some reflection, and superstitious paranoia that comes with the Mexican culture, it was decided among my family that the handprint, coupled with the noise we heard downstairs, was an actual demon. We never found a logical explanation for the mark on his back. We were alone down there, and I would have been able to hear and feel some sort of impact against my uncle, since I was directly behind him with my hand placed on his shoulder. I tried to find a logical explanation for everything, but this was just plain weird and unnerving. That something was able to get between us two with either of us noticing. The fact that it was pitch black down there, admittedly, doesn't help. When my wife and I moved into our new apartment, we thought we hit the jackpot. It was almost too good to be true, and I know how cliché that sounds. Like it's the intro to every single creepy story you've ever heard. There's only one catch. I can just see the real estate agents selling the murder house to the unsuspecting newlyweds on every bad horror movie ever written. But there wasn't any sort of warning when the broker showed us around. It was exactly what we were looking for. It was more. It was a 2-bedroom, 2-story apartment beyond what we could have imagined. It was affordable and within our price range. The only sort of weird thing was that, for whatever reason, the building's only access to the basement was through a door in the back corner of our living room. And that does sound weird, right? But, and maybe this is just us really wanting this to work out, it didn't look that weird, not really. It was like a regular door, a little old. It was locked and it remained locked. We didn't even have a key. The landlord assured us, other than the utility guy coming to check the building's gas and electric meter once a month or so, there wasn't really any reason that anyone would have to go down there. It took us a while to finally settle in, with both of us working full-time. The boxes from moving day just had a way of blending into the background of our daily lives. But after a few months, we were mostly unpacked. And that is when I began feeling a little uncomfortable, having the door there all the time. I blamed most of it on my overactive imagination. When I was a little kid, I was always scared of going down to the basement by myself. I'd think about old episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark? Or scary stories told by classmates at school, and I'd freak myself out. Shadows would morph into monsters, and footsteps from upstairs would turn into the muffled sounds of dead spirits. I knew it was all in my head, but the fear, that palpable panic, I'd run upstairs positive that something was chasing up me. Reaching out, I'd pull back down into the darkness. But eventually, I grew up. Every once in a while I'd read something online, an especially creepy story, or I'd see that rare horror movie that kept me up for a few nights after. But I was an adult. I was grown up. All of these feelings, and the mounting sense of dread, I could dismiss it when I really needed to. If I had to go to the basement, maybe I'd have like a sense memory of what it felt like to be terrified of nothing. But that's all it was. Nothing more than residual emotion. In the weeks after we had unpacked, we started to get more comfortable in our new place. When I came home after work, I would feel less and less each day like I was walking into a stranger's house, and a little more like I was arriving home. Except for the door to the basement. At first, I tried to will myself to ignore it. I'd tell myself, just wait it out. Sure, it's a little spooky. The idea of a blocked-off passageway to hidden downstairs. but I just had to learn to not pay attention. We set up TV on the opposite end of the couch of the room, so not to be forced to stare directly at it while on the couch. Only that seemed to enhance the sense of unease. It was like running up from the basement as a child, that tingling sensation on the back of the neck, like now that I tried to veg out on the couch at night, I'd feel the door on the back side of my head. It would have this almost physical awareness of my location, my proximity to it. There'd be the occasional shuffling sound, almost imperceptible, which, yes, I was getting a little spooked, but this is the city. It's a loud place. You hear noises everywhere. It could have been mice or rats, something legitimately scary, but it was getting to me more and more. So I flipped the layout around so the couch now faced the door, and it was kind of better. I still felt uncomfortable, but not as much, now that I could direct most of my attention towards the TV and pretend like whatever it was I was feeling was a result of whichever show or movie I happened to be watching. The whole door stood out of place in the otherwise neatly kept living room. While the building itself was old, you could tell the owner must have renovated this apartment within the last 10 years. But that door must have been from like way before. Years of paint jobs had accumulated on the top layer, giving that kind of over-smoothed, rounded look. And the moulding around the frame was a little more warped than the rest of the room's woodwork. A few times late at night, I thought I caught something out of the corner of my eye. There was a gap underneath, maybe 1.5 inches from the ground to the bottom of the door, and I'm telling you, a few times I'd be watching TV with most of the lights out at night, and I could see the reflection on the screen on the tile flooring, illuminating maybe 1/2 inch underneath. That's what I'm talking about. It's like I saw tiny movements breaking the glow from underneath, and each time that I thought I saw it, it happened so quickly that I didn't even have a chance to really confirm if it had actually happened or not, or if it was just my mind playing tricks on me. You know, like sometimes you think you see something from the corner of your eye, but it's nothing. That's what this was like. I'd be staring at the TV. I'd never get a chance to look directly at the flicker. But it gave this illusion, like something was moving on the other side, something pressed right up against that door. My wife is easily spooked, so I didn't want to say anything to her, not directly. She'd begin to panic. I'd have to start accompanying her downstairs every time she needed anything from the ground floor, but she started spending less and less time in the living room. Eventually, we set up a smaller TV upstairs, and we would kind of just hang out almost exclusively in the second bedroom. It was this unspoken thing between the two of us, almost like we were too afraid to verbalize exactly what we might be thinking. Because what if I told her, "Hey honey, I'm getting really creeped out about the basement door. I can't exactly explain what's making me feel uneasy, and I don't have anything to back up my explanation but growing sense of dread." What if she said, "Me too"? Would that have made it real? It's like I can think about my own crazy thoughts and fears, but to hear them validated like that? No. I wouldn't want to go downstairs ever again. And what were we supposed to do, break our lease and find another apartment? I had this dream one night. I was downstairs watching TV, and the door to the basement was open. There was a man sitting on the stairway, and even though I was conscious of the fact that this was totally out of the ordinary, I still just kind of sat there, hoping that if I could pretend to ignore what was happening, then it wouldn't be real, that maybe he wouldn't interact with me either, and he'd go away. But he turned his head towards me. I couldn't make out what he looked like because he was just sitting there on that first step, obscured by darkness. "Come here," he said. "I can show you a way out." And despite the fact that everything in my head told me to get the hell out of there, in my dream, my body just kind of calmly stood up and began walking towards the door, like I didn't have any control, like I was being sucked in. That's when I woke up. It was the middle of the night, and I had a lot of trouble, even just laying there trying to fall back asleep. I kind of just waited out the rest of the night under the covers, pulling them up really tight all the way up to my head, forcing my eyes shut, absolutely terrified that if I looked up, I'd see something in the room with us, like I'd open my eyes and there'd be a face staring at me only inches away. I was getting lost in my imagination, and when the sun finally rose, I took a shower. I packed my stuff for the day, and I bolted out the front door without so much as even looking towards the living room. "Did you sleep well last night?" my wife asked me on the phone sometime during the day, and I lied and told her everything was fine. "Did you?" I asked her back, and she was kind of like, "Yeah, me too, fine." And I couldn't tell if she was fine or if she was afraid, like I was afraid, like maybe she needed me not to be afraid because I kind of felt like I needed her not to be afraid. It was getting too much. I was starting to feel a little boxed in. When I got home, there were footprints coming from the basement door, white, dusty footprints, like worker boots. I froze where I stood, and I called up the super. "Hey man, did the utility guy come today to check the meter?" "I don't know, the utility company's got its own schedule," he said, "and their own key to the building. So it should be like that every month or so. But you weren't around today, like you didn't see if they went down to the basement." "Look man, I don't know, okay? Is everything okay with the place?" "It's just some footprints. Must have been from the basement." "Yeah man, that could be it. I'm sure it was the utility guy." After I hung up, it took me a few minutes to muster up the will or energy or courage or whatever it was to move from where I stood. I walked to the basement door. I put my hand on the knob and I turned it. It wasn't locked. I kept my hand there for a minute. Would I pull the thing open? Part of me felt drawn to it, but I was frozen. I didn't want to see what anything looked like. I didn't want to give my mind anything real to build any more dreams or illusions around. Okay, I didn't want this basement to be any more of a reality than it already was. I called the super back up. "You know what? I don't think it's going to work out. Okay, it's not enough privacy, not with people having access to our place. I think we have to figure something out." "That's going to be tough. If you want way out, it's going to cost you." My wife must have felt similarly uncomfortable, because she didn't tell me I was crazy when I told her I wanted to leave. We agreed to the terms right away. The first and last month's rent, plus the security deposit gone. She went with my line, that she didn't like that other people had access, but I could tell there was something else. And now that we're in a new place, it's like I still can't shake the feeling. That mounting sense of doom. Like when I try to sleep at night, I can still sense it. Hear something hovering just right there. Like all I have to do is open my eyes. Every noise I hear is something coming to pull me down, and I can't shake it. I'm not getting over it. I don't think my wife's herself lately either. And when I dream, I'm still right there in that living room, or I'm even right here in this bed, and there's that open doorway to my side, a little closer each time. And I want to turn away. I want to do something, anything. But that guy is always calling to me, hidden in the shadows, and I'm not sleeping all that well anymore. I just feel like I'm losing it. Like I don't know how I'm supposed to deal with any of this. It's like I'm totally unraveling here. I was living in a sorority house with 20 other women. The house was super old and was in terrible condition. The basement had items from residents that lived there years prior, but never took their stuff. A guy was living in the basement for who knows how long. He was smart to pick our house. There were so many people that would not notice things looking out of place because we assumed one of the women in the house just moved it, took it, or ate it. One day, a cleaner was downstairs doing laundry in the basement, and she noticed a bed set up behind the piles of junk people left. Then she noticed the man. He claimed he was dating one of the girls and was just drunk and got mixed up and landed in the basement accidentally. She called campus police and they came to investigate and told us he had probably been down there a while and he was using the basement door to get in and out of the house. I don't remember if they caught him, as this was over 10 years ago, It certainly was scary. I've got a story to share with you about my basement, but let me describe it so that you get a better understanding. There is a big open spot taking most of the basement at the end of the stairs, along with the hallway going parallel to the stairs leading to a bathroom, to the left under the stairs, and the furnace room to the right. Lastly, there's a laundry room directly at the end of the stairs, so to the right. If you're in the laundry room, you can see if a person comes down the stairs when you reach the bottom step, unless you're at the back of the room. I am in high school, and I'm a fairly active kid, if I do say so myself. With all of this COVID stuff, I found more time to play guitar, which I have a passion for. I've always had a thing for building too, so I decided to build myself a new guitar stand, just for when I don't have anything to do. I'm currently in the laundry room cutting wood, because it was the only room that wasn't carpeted, so that I could clean the sawdust faster. Because I was sawing by hand, my arm had gotten tired, and it was so extremely hot in the room I stopped for a break. Now, it would also be a good time to mention that it was just me and my stepmom, and that my dad was at work, so I stopped for a break when I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. Our stairs are old and creaky, so when someone walks down them it's loud. At first I thought nothing of it, thinking my stepmom was coming down to see how I was doing, or ask me to stop for the night as it was getting late. But me being the awkward teen I am, I just sit there and watch the doorway waiting for her to come and talk to me. But I got a little weirded out when no one came in, considering my stepmom just came downstairs. So I sat and waited to see what was happening for about 10 seconds, when I hear my stepmom get out of her bed upstairs on the opposite side of the house. That's when I realized what had just happened, and I rushed over to my phone and started spamming my girlfriend to call me. I got even more scared when she said her phone wasn't letting her call me, with 2 bars of service. When it finally worked, we sat and talked, as I was too scared to go near the stairs to go up to my room. After explaining the situation to her, something hit me, and I realized that the only way I wouldn't have seen anything is if whatever came down those stairs turned instantly and went into the hallway to the bathroom and furnace room. What makes that really weird is that before this event, both me and my girlfriend had talked and agreed that specific hallway gave us both eerie vibes. Even as a kid, I would never turn my back on that hallway unless I had to. And if I did, it wouldn't be for long because it frightened me. This isn't the first thing to happen to me. Though, not much. When I was home alone about a week ago, I was in my room watching YouTube, when my Wi-Fi randomly shut off for no reason and then turned back on a few minutes later. Now that's only happened once, and when it did, the carrier service came to fix it. Another couple of small things have happened too, but I don't think they're worth mentioning. Finally, some of you might think that I just heard the stairs in my head, but I can tell you, the floor is creaky as hell, and I heard every step of an entity walk down them. This happened to me when I was back in college. I lived with my 3 high school friends in a basement apartment. Our unit was really spacious, especially the living area and the kitchen area, but the ambience was a little off. One day our common friend from high school came over. While we were casually talking in the living area, he told us that he saw some black shadow figure in the kitchen near the bathroom hallway. We all had goosebumps, because each one of us started telling that they were getting creeped out whenever they'd go to the bathroom. And then one day in the living area, while I was watching on my laptop, my roommate stopped by to watch with me. She was there standing behind me silently. The next day she told us something that really scared us. She said that while she was watching, someone's arm was on her shoulder. Not a person's arm, but a dark, shadowy arm. But our friend just stood there and did nothing until the arm was gone. The next day was one of my own experiences in the apartment. Everyone was in their room. I was left alone in the living area doing my plate, and it was already past midnight. While doing my plate, I felt someone brush against my nape. At first, I thought it was my hair since I tied it up, but then I realized that I tied it up in a tight bun, so there's no way it was my hair. By this time, I remembered my friend's story about the arm. In an instant, I got all panicky, and my heart was like it was about to explode. I texted my friend in the other room and heard her laugh, because she heard the commotion I made outside while picking up my things. Ugh, the audacity of this girl. I guess that it's not the only one entity living with us, but there were two. This time it was my roommate's story. One day she was preparing to go to school, and she asked us what time it was. Someone replied, but then she remembered that she was the only one in the apartment, knowing that we all left for class at 7:30 a.m. She realized at that moment that the person who responded had said it in the voice of a child. There was no way there was a kid in an all-college apartment. After that, she ran out the unit like her life depended on it. After 2 years of living there, we moved out. As a child, I was close with my mother. I was the first child, and my sister was born when I was 4. My mother used to tell me of the supernatural encounters she had when she was young, before I was born. We were Catholic, and so had always believed in God and the devil, and from my mother's stories, I had always also believed in ghosts. I was a very sensitive child, and, at the age of 47 today, still consider myself as such. My childhood and adult life has been punctuated with supernatural experiences, most encounters of one sort or another. These were fairly frequent as a child, but decreased in frequency and severity over time throughout my adult life. I've always been a spiritual person, and eventually learned how to take authority over these encounters and deter them as I got older. I grew up in an alcoholic family, my father being an alcoholic, and he moved us around the country a lot throughout my childhood. He was also very domineering and abusive in some ways. So many of the supernatural experiences I've had, my therapist girlfriend has attributed to unhealed trauma. I maintain that the low energies of trauma tend to attract entities of similar frequencies. Anyway, we moved a lot, and my sister and I always thought our houses were haunted. It was only when we were both adults that we concluded it wasn't the houses that were haunted, but our mother. My mother was a very good-hearted, sweet person who was sort of the heart and soul of our family, a true saint. However, as her confidant, I knew she had a lot of trauma in her past as well. She always maintained that spirits were good, but my sister and I had many experiences to the contrary. I have many stories to share, but tonight I'm going to share the most negative and most intense encounter I have ever had. I have not thought of this in detail in a very long time, and I'm not sure how I'm going to feel recounting the event, but I feel inspired, so let's do it. My worst encounter by far was with an evil spirit in my house that my father built in Sherwood Prince Edward Island. I was 14 at the time, a shy and troubled teenager struggling with esteem issues. I was into Dungeons and Dragons, horror movies and stuff like that. The basement of our bungalow was half finished. There was a stretch of unfinished basement at the bottom of the stairs, a furnace room to the left, and the entrance to a small apartment at the far side. The apartment had a large rec room/kitchen area, a small bathroom, and a bedroom. I spent a lot of time in that basement working on my D&D stuff, and took to sleeping down there as well, even though my bedroom was upstairs. I remember I would always watch horror movies down there on my small black and white TV, on the end table beside the bed. I remember that at the time, the Amityville horror movie was my favorite. I must have watched it a dozen times at that point. Now, it's important to note, this was a small empty room with no windows and a closet. I would be in there watching horror movies all the time, no problem. It wouldn't really freak me out. I slept fine down there for months without any issues. So what I'm about to tell you now is a really vivid, really authentic experience, not just a bad dream or getting freaked out from a movie. I distinctly remember waking up and opening my eyes, but the room is pitch black because it didn't have any windows. What awoke me was a powerful, pulsating entity of pure evil floating about 3 feet above my bed, slightly to the left. I was aware of how afraid I was, and it appeared to be taking great delight from my fear. It was mocking me. It hated me. It wished to devour me, and it stayed like that, pulsating. I couldn't see it physically, but I was sure it was smiling, as I was basically paralyzed with fear. I was trembling, but couldn't seem to move, talk, nor scream. One thing I do remember doing was opening and closing my eyes hard several times just to make sure I was awake. After a few minutes, it started to communicate to me that it was going to move through me. I started to feel tears go down my cheeks into my ears. Then, it did just that. The pulsating entity swooped down into my body, causing it to tremble more. Then it came out the other side, pulsating about 3 feet above my bed to the right. I was consumed by terror. After that, I remember lying there unable to move. I don't remember it leaving. However, I do know that a long period of time seemed to pass, and at some point it was gone. Even after it was gone, it took a long time for me to regain the ability to move my body. I assume I had been laying there awake for at least a few hours or more. So once my feet found the floor, I ran and didn't stop until I was under the covers of my bed upstairs. Eventually, I did go back to sleeping down there in that basement room, but I think it took about 8 months. Looking back now, I'm not sure how I ever went back down there again. I'm remembering these events as best I can almost 30 years later, so it's hard to know exactly what was going through my head with that decision. Because I can tell you, if I were to visit that house now, I wouldn't sleep down there if you paid me. Actually, I don't think I'd want to sleep in that house at all. 6 or 7 years ago, I lived all by myself at my dad's house. He was out of the country on business trips and whatnot. Sometime midsummer, I was taking a nap in the middle of the day, downstairs on the living room couch, right next to the front door. My cat was chilling at my feet. During this nap, I started having a vivid dream of me walking down the driveway towards my front door. Everything was so perfect and in place, and so alive. Just no sound. I couldn't hear a thing. I eventually stepped on the front porch. I could hear it now. Far away though, it was kind of faint. As I approached the front door, my steps got louder, clearer. I stopped at the door and kind of tried to look through the window. It was too bright out, and I couldn't see inside. I turned the knob, pushed the door in, and felt a rush of air through my hair. Slammed the door. It had a dull thump. It was decently loud. It was off to my right. It occurred to me I'm not in my body. I don't even know if I'm looking through my own eyes. What I'm hearing does not correspond to what I'm seeing. Was this me? I don't know. But whatever it was looks at me. There I am, sleeping, face up on the couch. My cat is at my feet, somewhat unamused, but looking right back. Steps approach and stop right there next to me, and just stare. Dead silence. Look at the cat. The cat loses interest and just puts her head back down, staring back at me sleeping. I remember trying to wake up, trying to move, but I wasn't moving, just breathing. No clue how long it was, just there watching, but it was a hot minute. Eventually it turns around and walks away towards the stairs and pauses to look for a minute. There it was, Heavy steps on hardwood floor going away towards the stairs. It goes up into the center of my bedroom, stops and just looks around. The wood floor above me was making a small creaking noise. It was staying still, but it had weight. It looks at my bed, my desk, out the window, at the floor, closet, ceiling, just around. I don't know how long. A while. It turns around, back down the stairs, right back next to me, all the while listening to the steps from my perspective. Just watched me sleep. The cat doesn't even care this time. I can feel its presence almost physically there, just watching me breathe. I'm trying to fight. I want to wake up so badly, and eventually it turns and heads to the door. It slams open. A breeze goes through my hair. It looks at me one last time and slams the door behind. Bam! I spring straight up. The cat jumps off and takes off into the kitchen. I'm a little sweaty, but did that actually happen? It was the craziest dream ever. I snap my head back towards the door and it's closed. I get up and check. It's unlocked. After looking through the window, I see no one's there, and I run to the other window to look down the driveway. No one. That was the first part of the experience. What happened next is that in the middle of the night, I awake and sit straight up. I feel nothing, empty and numb. I stand up off my bed, completely on autopilot, and head downstairs into the living room. I don't turn on any lights whatsoever. I'm just walking through the dark home. I walk to the empty couch and stand there. I don't know why. I turn towards the TV and just stare at my faint reflection on the screen. I'm still empty, but I start to get a feeling of purpose. Who knows how long I stood in front of the TV, but eventually I head to the kitchen and flick a light on. I stand still, looking around empty. I don't know why I'm there or what I'm looking for, but I am looking for something. I look at the cabinets, sinks, table, dishes, and then up at the light. I'm still numb, but there's a sense of urgency. I turn around and head back to the stairs. There's the door to the basement. The kitchen light is dim here. I open the door, flick the light on, and down the basement steps I go. They're steep. Maybe I don't want to go down there. I'm on autopilot though. I have to. On the way down, I finally begin to feel it. It's a feeling of progressing anxiety. I make it down and stop. I pull on the string to turn on another light and I look around. I don't know what for, but I have to find it. I stare at the washer and dryer next to me, and then at the next light. Then I hear a whisper. I know which way to go. I don't want to, but I begin heading that way. My hand slides over the washer and dryer. I want to grab onto something to stop myself, but my hand won't listen. I pull the next string. The opposite end of the basement is dimly lit. That's where I need to be. The whispering is louder. It's saying more. It's pleased. I keep walking. I'm trying to stop. My heart pounds. I'm scared, and there's a knot in my throat that feels like impending doom. I'm so calm, though, and still so numb. This is supposed to happen. Why fight? I've reached the end of the basement. I'm at the wall. I know what it wants. The very second I touch the wall, I'm on my back, at least 4 feet back. A pressure builds on my chest. It gets harder to breathe, and the whisper is loud. It's pleased. It screams so loud, and it gets right in my ear that I can feel it breathe. I open my eyes wide, and I was on the floor. I was upstairs, halfway through the doorway down the basement, torso on the floor, legs hanging down the stairwell. I sit up, empty and numb, but my back was sore. The basement was lit. The lights had been turned on, and the kitchen light was still dim. The sun looked like it was about to rise. I sat there for a long time, possibly an hour or two, not really thinking, just processing. I felt hungover. The sun had just come up, and I just went about my life, as if that never happened. Hey guys, Mort here. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed tonight's basement stories. It was certainly an interesting trip. If you did, you can of course let me know in the usual way. Support and comments and the like are always very much appreciated. I'd like to extend an extra special thank you to all my members and my patrons and my coffee supporters. You guys really do mean the world to me, so thank you for sticking around, watching the videos, and just supporting the channel. It's awesome. Please ignore the noise. Pandy is playing with the musical instruments. So Pandy caught a cold from school, and she has passed it around the house now. Everyone but my wife is a little bit sick, so yeah, that's fun. Back to the teas. But I hope all of you are well, and stay safe, stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.